Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Matt Show, featuring me, your host, Matt. We were originally supposed to have on Tim Ryan as our third guest this week on our 6th episode of the show, but unfortunately today you're going to be stuck with me. We're going to be kind of doing something a little different today. I want to make this a fun stream where I get to just rant and rave on whatever comes to my mind for about the next 60 minutes or so, and you all are welcome to participate. In fact, I would love to have a very active chat. And first thing I want to dive into today, the Dow was up 455 points today. Stocks did amazing today. Meanwhile, there was a jobs report out this morning that showed unemployment rate has risen to 14.7%, and a record 20.5 million Americans have lost their jobs. And if that didn't tell you that, I guess what Andrew always talked about, the current measures that we're using for our economy doesn't match up with what is actually happening. If that wasn't more kind of seen today, I really don't know what can show it more. I actually have some like investments in the stock market, and I was like yesterday I was super unsure like what to do, because I was like, well, there's about to be like a crazy jobs report out. There's no way that stocks can go up tomorrow. Like there's no way. I don't care what happens, because it's going to dominate CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. It's all going to talk about is how terrible the jobs report is. And somehow this morning, miraculously, stocks were significantly up. Thanks, Lil Masta. I appreciate that. Someone asked, Jack asked, what happened to Zach, by the way? So I haven't actually addressed this by myself. What did happen to Zach? I guess that would be a good thing to talk about. Basically, in about so the truth, this is actually the truth. Zach is I've been running the channel completely by myself ever since January 1st of this year. So it has pretty much been the Matt Show for the past 4 months and counting now. So why did that happen? There's a few reasons. One, Zach was extremely busy with school. That's the main thing. When we had started this channel, we had never thought it would become like what it is now, where it's kind of like almost like a full-time job in terms of staying on top of the news and also knowing just like especially when the campaign was active, making sure you kind of knew what was happening every day took a lot of time. And that was something that Zach, balancing school. I'm not in school, so I don't have that kind of a commitment, is something he had to deal with. Another reason, and I said this on the show with Paget on Monday, TMS number 4. I said, I'm kind of can be an asshole to work with sometimes. I can be a little frustrating. I can be stubborn. I can sometimes, think I'm right when I'm not, which is something I have to work on. But that's kind of like I'd say the most minor one. The last reason is Zach actually kind of likes Trump, which is fine, but I think he ended up liking Trump more than Yang. But yeah, there was no like rift or anything like that, which is why I never really talked about it, because I didn't want people to think there was like a rift or like a falling out. There isn't, and there never will be. Me and Zach have been best friends since our entire life. But yeah, it's like the if you were an investor on the stock market right now, you'd think the last month is going amazingly. You would think literally the last month. What is this? Will it load? 1 month. Oh, we're actually not that up. I guess the Dow's not up that much significantly over the past month. Whatever. Point is, dude. Point is, everybody watching, the stock market is definitely not does not have anything to do with how the people are actually doing. And it just goes to show like what Andrew talked about in terms of shifting our economy to measure how people are doing, is that really is so important, because Trump and Republicans are like, no, everything's going fine, the stock market's doing great, and then you actually look at it and people are doing terrible. Judy says Matt is a perfectionist. Matt is a perfectionist. He actually can be quite a perfectionist. Andrew Yang mentioned a podcast on his interview with Pete Buttigieg. Does he have a podcast? Yes, Jael. Andrew Yang does have a podcast. He, in fact, does. And it is called Yang Speaks, and you can find it on Apple, wherever really you watch this podcast. For sure says Matt should change his name to Math. So that's funny. Someone actually spelled my name once. It was Matth, and that's what they said I should go with. In terms of yeah, Jael, what a surprise! I know, right? In terms of I guess what was it? In terms of oh, I don't want to change the name from Zach and Matt show to Matt show or anything like that because it's the Zach and Matt show, and I do hope that at one point Yang does come back. Like I felt like what mic are you using for your setup? I'm actually not sure. But thanks for the question. Zach bought this mic, so I'm not sure. I have no clue. But I felt back in the fall that me and Zach had a really good dynamic in terms of just talking to each other, and I think that's kind of has to do with the fact that me and Zach think in very similar ways. We have pretty similar personalities, and we kind of just bounce off each other well. I really enjoyed like our conversations back in the fall. I don't know if you guys did, but we had the Zach and Matt Show podcast, which now has turned into the Matt Show, and we would just kind of dish it out and like talk politics, and it just felt really natural, and I enjoyed the conversation. Like I would listen to it myself. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do a little bit tonight is kind of just rant and rave and talk the talk. Though there's like kind of nothing that I can be super duper passionate about. Like, or no, that's not the right way to say it. It's like there's only so much going on right now in terms of like the political world, and I find myself really interested in politics. But everything's the crown virus, as Paget calls it, has kind of consumed everybody, rightfully so. I mean, it's kind of changed everybody's lives pretty drastically. But at the same time, one thing, have you seen the Philip DeFranco interview with Andrew? I've not, Vaughn. One thing, like I think I've been thinking like the past few days is just kind of how do we're at this point, I guess, where it's like kind of it's like back to back generations, kind of like micro generations, where it was kind of the millennials in 2008. They got just the short end of the stick in terms of the financial crisis that occurred there, and in terms of just all the money going to the corporations. You guys already know the whole story, just total ridiculousness. And then the same thing's happening now, and again, it's the same people losing. It's like young people. I mean, everyone's losing right now because it affects everyone, but it's young people, and like it's just as like what I try to imagine as like as a young person in politics. Say you just got out of college during the 2008 financial crisis. You saw how messed up that whole situation was. We own both of the paintings behind you, similar taste in art. Oh, thank you, Crystal. Crystal. I apologize. Crystal, thank you very much. What was I ranting or raving about? Oh, yeah. So you had that happen. Say you just got out of college. You're 22 years old, and you're like, that's really odd. Like and then like, why did the corporations get all the money? The banks are the ones that caused this whole crisis. Why did they get bailed out? And then now we're in the situation where that same person here, 12 years later, is still hasn't been able to pay off all their student loan debt that they got back when the financial crisis was at its beginning. And now we're at this scenario where you're seeing the same thing happen again. So all the problems that existed kind of like in 2008 and post 2008, as we know in the Yang Gang, they kind of never really resolved themselves, right? In terms of before the crisis, 76% of Americans still live paycheck to paycheck. Half Americans couldn't afford an unexpected $500 bill. And then we go to this point now where we're going through another crisis. And again, why is it? And it frustrates me, and it makes me kind of cynical about politics and just kind of cynical in general. And I hope that's kind of why I'm bringing it up, because I hope that you guys don't become cynical about it. And I would like to hear what you guys think on it as well. Is again, with this current crisis, what happened within weeks of a week or two of the government, pretty much everything shutting down, right? The phase one of the CARES Act passed. It's like a $2 trillion stimulus to the corporations, and the Fed injected around, I think it was like $2 trillion to Wall Street. And fundamentally at its core, I don't have a problem with Wall Street or the corporations getting money, because in my opinion, Wall Street and I mean, I don't really think it should be opinion. I think it's a fact. Wall Street and the corporations, they had nothing to do with coronavirus. They aren't the reason why a virus is ravaging the country and we had to shut everything down for a health emergency. So that I don't have a problem with them getting bailed out. But what I do kind of have a problem with is when literally, again, kind of referencing what we were talking on the beginning, when 20 million Americans are unemployed, the worst month for jobs in history since the Great Depression. 15% unemployment, and it's only going to go up. It's still going to get worse before it gets better. And all the government could do for the people was this measly $1,200 stimulus check that was it was means tested, which at the time, it's like, hey, at least oh my gosh. Sorry, I hope that didn't show up on camera. Oh my gosh, at least we're moving in the right direction. And then but then it turns out a lot of people haven't even received their stimulus checks yet. Of course, the whole thing with if you were like a college student, you couldn't even get the stimulus check, or if you were claimed as a dependent, because you were in college, you didn't actually have an income. Your parents claimed you as a dependent to help them with their taxes. Suddenly, you're now screwed because bureaucracy. So, I mean, fundamentally, why does our government? Well, we know why, right? We know the answer. Okay, it's because of the influence that money and lobbyists and money have in politics. It pervades and disrupts. But it's like isn't it such a sad scenario? The moment when you need the government the most, I'd say, when there's like a mass pandemic that's ravaging everything, that's when you need the government the most. And what do? They say, screw the people, fuck the people. Here's your $1,200, some of you. Go mend for yourself. Steve Mnuchin says that 10 weeks, a $1,200 stimulus can last. I think he said 10 weeks, I'm not sure. I assume Steve Mnuchin isn't living on like the equivalent of, what is that, $10, $15 a day or something. And it's kind of like a cynical viewpoint, and I do think it's why one of the things that we could have done as the Andrew Yang campaign is I think we really could have made it a real focus, I think, of the campaign to have Andrew's democracy reform package at the forefront of his set of policies. Like, how many people that had heard of Yang actually really knew about democracy dollars? And I mean, one thing, when I was in Iowa, the loudest applause that Andrew ever got was when he would mention term limits. And Andrew happened to also be the only candidate, as far as I know, not even Bernie, that supported congressional term limits. And that's like a huge winner. You know what I mean? Everything that we want to get done in terms of what Darla has here with UBI, it does make you doubt we'll ever get UBI, but we gotta remain hopeful. We gotta try to avoid the cynicism as much as possible. But if we do want to get things like UBI and eventually universal health care and deal with climate change and have a carbon tax and every single bold visionary policy idea, you want to actually have like a true immigration system that actually works for people, where that they don't have to because with the way our immigration system works now is Republicans will complain, oh well, we have all these caravans and people coming over the border and blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, but at the same time we don't have a somewhat even remotely like efficient or somewhat like just legal immigration system just for people to get in the country easily. So it's like, if we want to actually change that and have a system that doesn't make it so that people have to make this dangerous 1,000-mile trek out of Latin America to have a chance at something bigger, living in America, like, or even things like I'm very passionate about drug reform and criminal justice reform, because I think it's very unjust what the government does. None of that's going to ever happen unless the democracy reform comes first. And I think that's like something I think the campaign and us as the Yang Gang should focus more on in a future Andrew Yang run. Perdumnia says, Andrew also shows you need more people in office who have experience outside of government. There's a reason Andrew had unique ideas when others didn't. Yeah, Perdumnia, it's definitely just from his entrepreneurial mindset and in terms of just being like non-ideological, not very partisan, just focused on solutions. So I think that it kind of just that sums up like we're just it's like such a dark point, I think, for a lot of people right now. Like it definitely is. And it just feels like once again like there's nobody in Washington, the leaders who are supposedly fighting for us, they're just not doing anything. And it's very unfortunate. Beat me up, Mr. Scott says, I think Yang was a happy fall guy. He knew he never had a chance. And I'm gonna actually have to disagree with you, Mr. Scott. One thing that happened and this I don't think I've ever shared this before, is when I was in New Hampshire right after New Year's, I was at an office opening for Andrew, and I believe, was it Keene? It might have been Keene, New Hampshire. Not that that matters necessarily too much. However, I asked Andrew to sign some stuff because we were doing those merch giveaways. I don't know if you guys remember that, where we were giving away merch for people who helped. Who it was called the Yang Gang. We kind of still do it. Anyways, besides the point, I had Andrew sign some like 4 books, so he was like next to me for kind of a second, like, you know, longer than just like a hey, good to see you. I see you again on the next one. You know, as much time you have for Andrew. He's a very busy guy. But as he was signing the books, he asked me, can you believe we made it this far? And I was like, no, I can't. And he said something along the lines of like, and it's going to be like even crazier, like something along like, it's going to be even crazier when when we reach the White House a year from now. And I was like, yes, it will be. Unfortunately, we didn't make it, but like, I know Andrew always said, he was like, well, you know, even when you start a business, what do you tell everybody if they ask how it's doing, even if it's doing badly? Oh, it's going great. It's doing fantastic. So, you know, Andrew is definitely always the optimist in terms of, you know, we're going to peak right when the voting starts. We're going to make the debate. We're not going to miss anything. But like, I don't know if that would stretch as far as like the optimism in a one-on-one conversation to kind of just like wear a mask. So I do think that Andrew genuinely, I mean, I genuinely believed that Andrew had a chance. I think everything had to go absolutely perfect. But and of course it didn't. We were the longer than long shot campaign, and when you're the longer than long shot, oh, I know what I'm talking about next. Bet I just got my next topic. So you have to do everything right. And Darla says she's still waiting for peak Yang. And technically, when Andrew said, I'm going to peak as soon as the voting starts, he wasn't wrong, guys. Andrew peaked as soon as the voting started. He just wasn't a candidate anymore. Okay, so I know what I want to talk about. I want to rant because it's Matt Rant and Raves. That's, if you look in the description, it's Matt Rant and Raves on the news of the week. But this has nothing to do with this week. I want to talk about why I think Andrew is really set up well for 2024, and I can give you a lot of reasons. First one, money. Andrew raised in 2019 quarter one $1.3 million. Quarter two, I believe it was like 2.9 or 3.2 million. One of you can correct me. And then quarter three, it was 9.9 million. And then quarter four, he had his biggest haul. It was 16.5 million. And so, but what was the effects of that? Obviously, he had insane increases just quarter to quarter to quarter. But what effectively happened is Andrew didn't actually have enough cash on hand and enough enough of an organization back in the summer to where he was able to set up a national campaign where he would have had, I think, you know, it was Pete Buttigieg who won Iowa by delegates. And I think he was in Iowa back in the summer with like 25 offices. And Andrew did eventually get up to like 15 offices in Iowa, but he was still opening offices in December and January, just because so much of the money that they had raised came so late in the process. So what is different between now and 2024, the 2020 run and the potential 2024 run? Jimmy asked, how does Andrew deal with the media bias? I'll address that in a sec. Do you think it's actually here's kind of a good question, and everybody is watching. Hopefully, you guys participate and answer in the chat. How much did, like, if you I maxed out to Yang this time around, and I can pretty much guarantee, like, I know pretty much probably everyone here who was able to donate it. I'm sure there's a few of you who maxed out as well. I know a lot of people spent a lot of money that they didn't have trying to get this man elected, which is incredible and shows the power of his ideas. But here's I guess the interesting thing. How much would you donate to Andrew Yang if he ran next time around? Simple question. You would, right? You would do it again because you believe in him. That's why you're still watching this channel, even though Andrew dropped out 2.5 months ago, because you believe in the movement. You believe in the ideas. Don't you think it's reasonable that you would donate to Andrew as soon as he announces next time around? Do you think it's reasonable that instead of raising 1.3 million in the first quarter, in 2019, that in the first quarter of 2023, that Andrew could raise $1.3 million within a few hours? I think that's pretty reasonable. I think it's pretty reasonable that Andrew could raise, if his profile blows up enough between now and 2024, I think it's reasonable Andrew could do over 10 million in the first quarter in a future run, and then increase from Q1 again to Q2 to Q3 to Q4. And suddenly, instead of reaching those whopping numbers when it's almost too late to set up organizationally, the campaign should be able to, and like, it's kind of another question. People go, well, what state should we focus on next time around? If we raise enough money and do things right, it shouldn't matter what state that we, it should, I mean, no, what I was going to say is we shouldn't have to be picking and choosing. Oh, are we going to focus on Iowa or New Hampshire or Nevada and South Carolina? It should just be, we focus on every state because we have enough resources to run a truly national campaign. Ideally, we have our offices set up in Iowa and New Hampshire and all the different early states that we want to hit in the summer, real early. And then we can, because, like, I know people kind of question, like, how much does canvassing actually work? I really do believe canvassing works. I feel like it's the reason that Pete was so strong in Iowa. He had a very, very good ground game, invested millions of dollars in Iowa. And there's also people who say, well, Iowa doesn't matter that much. Yeah, maybe. It didn't this time around, but, you know, people could argue, well, what happens if there's no shadow thing after Iowa, which kind of went against Pete. What if Pete actually does get the press coverage that comes with, I guess, winning Iowa, if the results were more clear that night instead of being kind of ambiguous? What if at the next debate, Amy Klobuchar didn't crush it and it was Pete Buttigieg who crushed it? And then he had won New Hampshire. And then imagine he goes to Nevada, and instead of Biden being the surprise second place, it was Buttigieg who was the surprise second place. And suddenly it becomes the Buttigieg versus Bernie election. I mean, it could have happened. There's a scenario there in which Pete, Mark says Iowa matters when there's no shadow. Oh, hello, Mom and Granddad. Thank you so much for tuning into the Zach and Matt show. With Matt. So, I mean, there is a scenario where things could have gone a little differently with Pete. So I think the early states do matter. So in terms of money and what money enables you to do as a campaign, I think Darla brought it up as well. Let me see if I can find it. Pay canvassers next time might be a possibility that they'd want to look into. Just because if you think about it, this time around, we spent $7 million on ads in Iowa. If we had just taken half of that and spent it on canvassers, if you do the math on that and break it down by, okay, how many canvassers can I hire if I have a team of canvasser, or like how many people can I hire if I want a team to canvass for 2 months and they work 40 hours a week and they're full-time paid professional canvassers and they make, say, $15 an hour or whatever. You can do the math on that and be like, wow, I can hire a team of 30 canvassers or something to go 2 months hardcore. And they're going to, I think that would have been more effective than, I guess, some of the ads. But so that touches on the money aspect. Someone mentioned the media earlier. Yeah, Mark says that was one of our worst spends. Hindsight's always 2020, Mark. But yeah, what could in terms of the media? Well, what was one of Andrew's big flaws when he was running for president? He got blacked out by the media, right? And what? But then here's the thing. So how do you solve for the media not taking you seriously and kind of getting blacked out by the media? Well, what Andrew decided is he was going to become the media. He would work for CNN and get the connections on the inside. And like, if you just take a look at it and you look at all the different connections that Andrew seems to have made or at least capitalized on, that maybe he had a connection during the campaign that we didn't know because it was a campaign and the crazy way politics work. I mean, he had Hillary Clinton. I know I'm not the biggest fan of Hillary Clinton. I know most of you won't be either. But Hillary Clinton tweeted out about Humanity Forward. Kim Kardashian, 25 million followers. You could think Kim Kardashian is full of herself, but she still has 25 million followers. There's still a lot of people that like and respect her. And she's a crazy, huge, influencing type person to work with. Tweeted about Humanity Forward. Stacey Abrams being involved with like the Project 100 thing that Andrew Yang started. The fact that he had that interview with Tom Perez. I mean, the We Are All Americans. Every single person, it seemed, in the world joined in on the We Are All Americans campaign that Andrew was widely responsible for. So he's building all these connections where realistically in 2024, everybody should know Yang. He shouldn't be the anonymous Asian man who wants to give everyone money, the magical Asian man. There should kind of be this like, oh, Yang's running. Like, it shouldn't be kind of a thing where like, and I do think, I think the Yang isn't going to tolerate that blackout stuff in 2024. But here's another thing to look at. Endorsements in terms of surrogates. 2020 run, Andrew Yang, just with the media blackout, he couldn't get any of his surrogates on TV. You never saw the press secretary for Andrew Yang or the chief policy advisor for Andrew Yang or this person who's endorsed Andrew Yang. You never saw them on any show on CNN or in some sort of panel like after a debate. And it's hard for your candidate to stand out on news media when Bernie and Biden and Warren and Pete, et cetera, all have their people on TV advocating for them after the debate, and Yang isn't able to do that. And also, this 2020 campaign, we rolled out a Dave Chappelle endorsement 2 weeks before Iowa. What do you think happens in 2024? Is Eric Sanchez is Yang gonna have to build up enough respect and connections to be able to go on MSNBC in 2024 where Eric Sanchez would be able to go on MSNBC? I would love that. Zach Grauman finally got on MSNBC after the campaign ended. If you don't know who Eric Sanchez is, he's the spokesperson. He was the spokesperson or traveling press secretary for the campaign. He's now the spokesperson for Andrew and Evelyn Yang. And Zach Grauman, I'm sure most of you know, is the campaign manager and is still Andrew's right-hand man. And they're both good guys, really good guys. But so what's going to happen in 2024? Hopefully all those people get on TV. Hopefully, instead of pulling out the Chappelle endorsement 2 weeks before the election, we go into the election with the Chappelle endorsement. We go into the next election where we're able to run a national campaign from the outset on every single level. I really think that should be the goal. And what's your opinion on Bernie? I'll put the comment up so I don't remember to talk about it. I will. Yeah, Mom. Hi. Saul, you and Granddad were watching. Hello. Make sure you guys, everybody watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying my Matt rants and raves. Okay. So what were we on? What topic were we on there? Brain fart. Oh yeah. Okay. Last big advantage. Do you think in 2024 the 5% that did come out and caucus for Andrew, or the 3% that did come out and vote for Andrew, even that that 3%, you could argue if Yang hadn't done so bad in Iowa relative to what the Yang gang was expecting, you could have made you can make an argument that well, maybe Andrew's actual base of support is like higher than 3, maybe it's 6 or 8 or 10. Are those constituencies going to go away? I don't think so. I think if those people stayed in Andrew the whole time when nobody was taking him seriously, that they wrote him out for this election, they're ready for him to come out in 2024. So And then just in terms of on a national level, I mean, who runs in 2024? I think Buttigieg will run. I think Klobuchar will run. I think Yang will run. I think there'll be whoever comes up to kind of take over Bernie's movement, be the figurehead of that, will run. And then I think there'll be like a few other surprises, people that kind of come out of nowhere. But Andrew's going to start off with a base of support next time around that he didn't have this time around. And what that's going to enable him is we are not going to be the campaign that is stressing out over making the first debate and the second debate and the third debate and nail biting on the last seconds of every single debate deadline. We're going to know from the start, guys, we're good. We're in pretty much all the debates instantly just because of all the work that was put in. And like he should realistically start off with, instead of working from 0 to 5 in Iowa, it should be working from 5 to getting 25% or whatever the number is that we need to win next time around. No, I am not going to write in Andrew unless I change my mind. I mean, I might write in Andrew. I live in Maryland, so my state's going to vote for Biden or whoever the nominee is. I'm leaving open the possibility that Biden somehow gets replaced. I don't see it happening, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. But yeah, just because I kind of, it's a weird thing. Beat me up, Mr. Scott. I kind of see it as like kind of, people won't like this answer, but I kind of do see it as like almost wasting your vote. But at the same time, I don't have a problem with anyone who does vote third party, because truly, if you don't like Trump and you don't like Biden, you shouldn't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. But I don't know. I like to feel like I matter somewhat, even though I know in the grand scheme of things, my Maryland vote doesn't. Though, so here's the thing, guys. Even if you don't like Biden or Trump, make sure you still show up to the polls on election day, because you could not want to vote for either of them, but your local elections and your local races. And if there's questions on the ballot, like it could be in Massachusetts. If anyone, by the way, is watching this from Massachusetts, they're trying to get ranked choice voting on the ballot. They need 14,000 signatures. You can find more information on my Twitter feed post last night. But you can get like initiatives like that up on the ballot and vote for them. So they still do matter. And I would encourage you to participate in them. What's your opinion on Bernie? I'd be happy to share my opinion on Bernie. So I see Bernie kind of in a similar light, I think, from a end goal perspective. I want to be careful how I word this, because I don't want that one person to be like, I knew it. Yang was a commie socialist. He's just like Bernie. Not that Yang is a commie socialist, but you guys know what I mean. In terms of what I think in terms of, I think Bernie wants a system where the economy works for us, just like Andrew. I think they both want there to not be poverty. I think that they both want corruption out of politics. I think that they both want a healthcare system where everybody can get, like everybody, no matter who you are, can get access to high quality healthcare. But so what the difference is how do they accomplish those goals? Bernie wanted to solve poverty by having a federal jobs guarantee and a $15 minimum wage and a bunch of other kind of ways that I just don't necessarily see as the right path. I kind of see a lot of the ways he would have accomplished his policies to be flawed. Just in the sense of whether I thought that it was just too much, the government having too much of a, I guess, too much government influence, I think, over things that to me at the end of the day should stay as capitalistic, if that makes sense. Anyways, I need to take a quick interim break. So what I got to do is find a funny thing for you guys to watch. I just have to use the bathroom. It's kind of embarrassing. I have something I want to talk about. It's something unrelated to anything to do with Yang. So I'm going to put it up on screen and we'll talk about it when I get back. So basically, This morning, I don't know, many of you may have saw it. There was this clip of Joe Biden. And so back to the Bernie thing. I just at the end of the day, I just don't agree with how Bernie accomplishes a lot of his policies. And I wouldn't vote for him because of it. Because even though I agree with a lot of Bernie's goals, I just fundamentally disagree on how he accomplished them in so many different ways that where I felt like Yang was a lot more kind of I think Yang, what I liked about Yang is I felt like he tried to let the market kind of do its thing, like in terms of what a true like market of capitalism actually does work for the people. I think he tried to keep his changes and made that he would have made to the economy as much as he could within the bounds of still allowing the free market to do its thing. And I think Bernie was a little different, and that was something I liked about Yang. But I think I don't have any what I always told people who like Bernie, and I was trying to tell them about Yang, I'd be like, yeah, I don't question like Bernie and Yang's integrity at all. Like I think they're both of their integrity of both of them is just unquestionable. But it comes down to, I think Bernie has 20th century solutions to 21st century problems. I think Yang has 21st century solutions to 21st century problems. So there was this clip this morning of VP Mike Pence on apparently passing out PPE, personal protective equipment, during the coronavirus pandemic. And why does this matter? Well, it doesn't really matter, except in the sense of, and I want, hopefully, if I sound like I'm kind of not making sense, hold with me here, because I have a point to make at the end, and I do think it kind of matters because it's something that personally bothers me a lot, and I think that I think it's an issue, I think, for Democrats on a broad level. I'm just trying to find the tweet. Okay, I found it. Oh no, it got deleted. Maybe I can't show you guys. Oh my. Mike, let me search it on Twitter. Mike Pence. Carla says he's about to mad himself. There's like 50 bots in here. No, there can't be bots in here. Mike Pence. Empty boxes. Okay, here we go. Now let me screen share. First ever solo episode. Don't know how to use technology. Okay. I'll be right back. Oh no.
Boxes of PPEs into a healthcare center and doing his best to lift them. What a hero. He just barely in the door. And since it was going so well, and also because he didn't realize he had a mic on, Magic Mike decided to keep it going. Listen in closely here. Mike Pence pretending to carry empty boxes of PPEs into a hospital is the perfect metaphor for who he is and what he's doing. A big box of nothing, delivering another box of nothing. Here he is with no mask on, wheeling boxes of PPEs into a healthcare center and doing his best.
So you just watched that clip there. And the reason I bring this up is this video here from at MattMFM on Twitter. Got hold up, let me just minimize if I can work StreamYard. Okay, there we go. The reason I bring this clip up is it has 7.1 million views. It has 92.5 thousand retweets. It has 235.7 thousand likes. And if you watch something like that, and I see all of you guys going lol and ah ha ha, like, oh my God, and thinking like, oh, another dummy Pence doing something stupid. Yeah, he's not wearing a mask, etc., etc. Yeah, and that seems true. And you'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean, like this, like you'd be like, oh, this is the dumbest thing ever. Like they're just doing like a publicity stunt. Blah blah blah. Blah. Oh, if you actually watch the original clip, which is on C-SPAN, I don't know if I can find that one as well. I want to see if I can find it. Okay. But now I want to show the unedited clip, and just bear with me because I do have a good point to make after I finish finish ranting and raving about showing you guys this stuff. Let me see if I can get this one. This is so what this is here, this is the full unedited clip.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Hey, staff, yep, I got it. Sorry.
Can kind of see. Let me just see if I can skip ahead a little. So just moving along. If you look here, it looks like the boxes are kind of heavy. Blah blah blah. Wheeling them over. All right, clearly, like, that's heavy. It takes two people to pick it up, right? And then this is the clip that the quote, so I'll be quiet.
They're a lot easier.
All right, so that's what I wanted to show you. And why did I want to show that? Because if you watch that clip, what it shows is that Pence, when he said, do you want to, the boxes are empty or whatever, like, do you want to just carry them or whatever? He then shut the doors, like they were done. That was the end of it. And, but what the way that they portrayed it on Jimmy Kimmel last night and what blew up on Twitter this morning is that all the boxes they were moving were empty. And this is kind of like my thinking on something like this. Something like this that blows up on Twitter that gets 7 million views and just explodes and everyone's like laughing at Pence and how dumb he is. It's red meat for conservatives and Republicans. It's complete. It's like handing Republicans and conservatives and people who want Donald Trump to have a second term. It's like handing them a perfectly cooked steak on the finest piece of dining, the finest plate in the whole world that you can find. And Mark is starting to come on it with the Fox outrage. Well, you know what conservatives are going to do now? Look, the fake news media, they lied about Mike Pence. They said he wasn't carrying anything boxes. They cut the clip, blah, blah, blah. It's doctored. It's edited. It's so terrible. The fake news media. And all the people who respond to those type of arguments, and there's a lot of them. It's actually about half the country. I mean, even more than that, I say don't like the news media. So many people, it will, like something like that, something really dumb, like one of these small little cultural issues where dumb stuff going viral on Twitter. It legit will motivate people out to vote, because at the end of the day, it's unfortunately the way our system is policies tend not to matter as much as like the culture wars. And this is a scenario where it's like all it's going to do is all the people who tweeted about this on Twitter and were like, Pence and Trump are so stupid, they're all going to already vote for Biden. They're all already voting for Biden. But the people who aren't going to vote for Biden, who aren't on Twitter, and if they hear about something like this, one of these corrections that came out on Twitter, they're just gonna be like, it's just gonna be like another reason like that. They're gonna be like, the media is stupid and it doesn't work. And the problem here is this is what happens with Trump in like the Trump administration. Anytime Trump does anything, even if it's like what I think is a fair take of this situation, which could be like, well, you know, Pence, like, why are you carrying like a few boxes? Like, it's just like a kind of like a photo op. Like, you're not really doing much. Instead of just having that take and being like, yeah, you know, you're managing like a national crisis. Is that really the best use of your time? Instead, it goes, oh, he's just carrying empty boxes, and they doctor the video, and it turns into this big thing. And it's taking what was like a 1 or a 2 and turning it up to a 10 or a 100. And all that does is, I said it on Twitter earlier today, this White House report, this, like, when I saw this thing, I saw April Ryan, she's a White House reporter, and she tweeted something like hashtag repent Pence, like the typical things that you'd kind of see in like a dunking on Trump tweet. And I was just like, you're a White House reporter. You're a reporter for the White House. And Trump is up there doing these press conferences where he's yelling at reporters going, "You're fake news and I'm the president," right? And people go, "Oh, he's being me." He's like, he's being unfair to the media. He's being ridiculous. He's being this and that. But then you actually have an actual White House reporter on Twitter spreading like this fake news, like just false like story, false narrative. It's something small, but it goes to like, I think, a greater issue. Like, I remember when Trump tweeted out from his Twitter account like the video of Nancy Pelosi, you know, I think kind of like the free, like the people who like are kind of like I guess the cancel culture people kind of came out and they're like, it's a doctored video, it needs to be deleted and removed. And then when like a doctored video is spread on the left side of the aisle, it doesn't get the same kind of I think it doesn't have the same kind of treatment as it does when it's the other way around. And that's just kind of how I think politics goes in general, where unfortunately we I don't know. Skyhole says, "OMG, Matt's doing good. It's like he's talking directly to me." Oh, thanks, Skyhole. And yeah, I just wish people could like be honest. Like, I just wish we didn't have to jump to this kind of silly stuff that becomes like I notice how it seems like on almost every day there's just some trend on Twitter about how like Trump is terrible, Trump's the worst ever, and it's like, yes, we know Trump's terrible, now what are we going to do about it? Like, can you help us with the Congress pass UBI trend? Like, come on. But yeah, all right, we've been live for like 48 minutes now, so we're coming up towards the end of this episode because I want to keep it under an hour. If you guys have like any questions that you guys want to ask, like maybe we can open up more to the audience here in this last 10 minutes. Also, since I didn't prepare at all for this podcast because I decided that I was gonna do a solo episode like 10 minutes before I went live, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of in the mood. You know, it can be kind of daunting and can be kind of intimidating trying to talk to yourself on camera for like 48 minutes. But I feel like I'm doing pretty good so far. Can you extend it to 2 hours? If I can think of stuff to talk about for 2 hours. I'm like I'm trying to balance like making sure I don't just have like periods where I pause and don't say anything or do nothing while I try to look up something to talk about. I don't know, throw like a topic in the chat. It's if you throw up a topic, I can rant on it. And then stop being sarcastic, Darla. How do we convince progressives that Yang isn't a libertarian Trojan horse? I think that's a good question, Darla, because it is something that as the Yang campaign moves forward, this movement moves forward. I know some people are like, you know, we don't need the burners. They didn't treat us fairly on the campaign, et cetera, et cetera. Biden didn't win with the burn. Look at Biden. He didn't need the burners. He still won. But I kind of disagree, just in the sense of, like I kind of was referencing when I was talking about Bernie. Bernie and Yang have such similar policy goals at the end of the day, like in what their final, like what I was referencing. So naturally, the Bernie constituency would be such a. Oh yeah, I heard Biden had a weird ad at Richard. Just in. What was I talking about? Just in terms of there's such a key constituency because that they do align very well with Andrew. So how do we convince them, like AOC, who made reference to Andrew Yang during the campaign trail, saying that he was this libertarian Trojan horse? How do you combat that? And I think one way is Andrew keeps doing like what he did last just this last week when he sued the New York Board of Elections with Skyle, the New York Board of Elections, in terms of where Bernie got taken off the ballot, as well as every other Democratic presidential candidate. The primary was essentially called off because of health concerns. And all right, I actually didn't use the bathroom. I'll be right back. Bear with me. Welcome back. All right, sorry about that. Unexpected delays during a live podcast. You never know what can happen. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. I didn't wash my hands. See? Okay, so how do we convince progressives that Yang isn't a libertarian Trojan horse? When Yang does something like that, I think that actually does go like a long ways to show that I think what we know, which is that Andrew's not like this libertarian Trojan. It's a good question. It's a good question, Darla. I think like at the end of the day, like, let me try to actually think of like a really good answer. I mean, I think kind of just as a movement, we need to make sure that we don't alienate burners, and I've said that plenty of times before on this this channel. They think he's a libertarian, Darla says. I think he's libertarian in some areas, definitely. I think it's I honestly think Andrew, he was talking about in his podcast on Yang Speaks this week. He said that one of the things that he felt like didn't work well for him in 2020 is what we were talking about earlier, in terms of he basically said that he believes that he found that he would go talk to truckers and white working class voters. You know, I think, and I'll use Fred as an example here. Fred the trucker. When Fred first met Andrew and took the meeting with him to have Andrew ride around in Fred's truck, this is, over a year ago now. Fred's original goal of taking the meeting was he just wanted to dunk on Yang and be like, "You're a Democrat, you're terrible." But what Yang said is that what he found was when he would actually sit down and talk with these people and have just a conversation with them on a human to human level, that a lot of the times people be like, okay, this is someone who actually is just trying to fight for me and do what's best for the people. And Yang basically said that one of his goals between now and 2024 is he has to go around and have those conversations with a bunch of kind of establishment figures, like, who are really involved in the Democratic Party. And I think it would also go on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think it'd be awesome to see Yang and AOC sit down and talk about UBI and hash this out here, because yeah, it's funny. This is definitely one of the more interesting things of the Yang campaign. Republicans and like more libertarian leaning voters, they thought Yang was a socialist because he wanted to pass UBI, but the progressives thought he was a libertarian Trojan horse. And I always say it can't be both of them, which means it's probably neither. Too funny. And Kurtzon just kind of referenced that, is he had a bad opinion of Ben Shapiro and the Mooch before Yang spoke to them. And I think that's 100% right, Kurt, on. Like, if all you've ever seen from someone is like their little sound bites on the news, stop boxing people as ideologies. Huh. You want Ben Shapiro to go on Yang's podcast? Me too. Mark agrees with what I'm saying, though. Yeah, I kind of already forgot what I was talking about. I didn't realize how. Oh, thank you, Yenny. That's so kind. I didn't realize how much focus it takes to talk. Like usually when you do these things with another person, you're only talking half the time. I didn't realize that. Like it's actually kind of hard to focus for like an hour and talk. I'm gonna have to work on this a lot. I'm gonna have to work on these, but I think this has been an all right stream. Maybe I think it's got a little weak in the last 15 minutes because I think I just half answered another question. Yeah, I don't know. We just don't, Karen. We just don't have a system designed where Andrew can really run as an independent. Like we just don't have a system in which there's really like a path for a third party. It's going to take something like if we really wanted to see a third party, what it would have to take is like when a situation arises where it's Bernie versus Biden, it has to be Bernie being like, yeah, no, I'm not conceding. All my supporters, I'm running third party. Vote for me. Let's campaign. Let's do this thing. But obviously that didn't happen and that's not going to happen. But I think that's the only way you'll actually get a legitimate like third party to move behind a candidate is you would have to take someone who's actually has a already existing, not to say Yang doesn't have a real movement, but I mean something like significant. And I don't think there's any disputing that Bernie has a lot more of a significant movement than Yang. And but I don't think it's also a stretch to say that Yang's could eventually be bigger. In fact, let's hope it will be because that means Yang will end up being president. SR asks, is Kamala's support for Bernie's bill a play for progressive support in the race for a VP pick or does she genuinely support UBI? That's a good question. I hadn't thought of it that way. I really would hope that it's not the former. I would hope it's the latter. I mean, it's technically it's the Kamala Bernie Ed Markey. I think that was the third senator. Their bill is technically not a UBI bill because it's means tested. Only people who make below $120,000 a year would get it, which I think is ridiculous because I think means testing is stupid and bureaucratic and makes people. It attaches a stigma to these payments when there shouldn't be a stigma. But I can't really make an honest like say on whether Kamala's support is I can't rule definitively. You would just hope it's the former, right? And in terms of I can talk about Biden's VP for a sec. In terms of who Biden should pick as his VP, I don't think Kamala would be a good pick. And why do I say that? I think there's a reason that Kamala had to end her campaign in December before, like 2 months before voting starts. I think there's a reason that while Andrew raised $16.5 million in Q4, Kamala dropped out in early December because she had only raised like a few $1,000,000, like under $3 million in Q4. Her campaign effectively went bankrupt. There's a reason for that. The voters didn't like her. And it's the same, like it's so if I'm Biden, I want a candidate who's actually going to help me appeal to new voters. And if I like this idea in the Democratic Party that if you just attach a person of color to the ticket that you automatically the voters of color will vote for you is actually very kind of, to me it would feel kind of demeaning. It's like, oh, a black person's running, so now I'm going to vote. Like I don't know. To me, it seems rather just kind of insulting to say that, oh, minorities don't vote unless someone that looks like them's running. And Joe won South Carolina overwhelmingly. So basically, I don't think Kamala would be a good VP pick. I don't think Biden's saying he was going to pick a woman was a good idea either. Like, I don't have a problem if Biden picked a woman. I just don't think you should decide who your VP is based upon like gender. Obviously, I'm biased. Obviously, I want Yang to be the pick, but I know he's not going to be, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, and it's kind of the same thing with a lot of the other picks. It's like Stacey Abrams, like, and I think Kamala and Stacey Abrams, they're the kind of candidates that, again, just because, like, I think when Kamala said things on the debate stage, like the fact that if the Congress doesn't pass the gun legislation that she wants to within the first 100 days, she's going to sign it by executive order. I think that sets like a rather dangerous precedent for when you have someone that you don't like in office. Like, do you want Trump to be signing executive orders on guns or abortion or all these different issues by pen? Probably not. So, and I think Republicans who are like small government and really care about the Constitution and really care about like having conservative supreme court seats there, something like that, where they're like, yeah, there's a realistic chance that Biden could not make it through a whole first term. I really don't want Kamala Harris and her view of executive power in the White House. That will motivate people to vote. And I think it's kind of similar with Stacey Abrams in terms of to Republicans, she's the woman who lost the race in Georgia by 50,000 votes and then claimed that she actually won, and the reason she lost was because of voter suppression. I don't know too much on the individual details, but I know that to Republicans, they kind of just see her as like a whinish crybaby, like type person. Like, it's the way that it's like the right leaning view of the world. That's how it looks from there. Steve asks, I have a question. Whatever happened to Zach? I thought this was the Zach and Matt show. I addressed that in the beginning of this thing. And yeah, beat me up, Mr. Scott. I'm a registered independent as well. And like I'll get called a Republican, and like I'll get called like a crazy Republican, and I'll get called a socialist shill. So I feel like I'm doing something right. Anyways, we're at a hour 1 minute 41 seconds. I think that's gonna wrap up this episode of the Matt Show, our first ever solo show. I feel like we had a very good conversation. I think it got a little rocky in the first half. Wow, thanks, Mom. You know, if I can't get my own mom to support me for president, then I don't think I'd have a good case for running. So, Mom, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Kurton says too short. Maybe. Yenny says, woo. Happy that it's over. Michi said it was great. Thank you, Michi. I'm just messing with you, by the way, Yenny. By the way, guys, give it up in chat. Give some love to Yenny, who was one of our Humanity First board members, sitting in Zoom meetings for 20 hours a week, making sure that the Yang Gang stays connected on a grassroots level. So thank you very much for everything that you do, Yenny. Mark, your mom is getting more active on Twitter. Appreciate it, Karen. Thank you very much. Matt, the dirty liberal. Woo! All right, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up. Enjoyed the conversation. And I hope all you guys have a good night. And, you know, if you're feeling, there's a lot of us, I want to end on this, I think, you know, a lot of people are feeling down right now. There's like this report out this morning, and it's kind of really, it's sad. It's depressing. That they're expecting that 75,000 Americans, which is about the same that have died of the virus so far, are expected to die deaths of despair because of alcohol abuse and drug abuse and suicide and depression, all the things that we already know are at record highs. It only got worse. So like, I want to end on this note. You know, if there's any of you who are struggling out there, or you're feeling down, or you know someone who's feeling down or struggling, just try to take it day by day. And that sounds, it sounds kind of, oh, just take it day by day. I think when you really do put things into perspective, like try to just focus on one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. I find that really does help. And if you know anyone out there that, you know, may be feeling down or maybe feeling lonely, or you're worried about them, take some time this weekend to give them a call or give them a text and let them know that you care about them, you miss them, and that you love them. All right. That's the end of the Match Show episode 1. Oh, someone wants to see my Trump accent? Hello, my name is Donald Trump. I'm your president, the best ever. By the way, I just got a call from the Ukrainian Prime Minister. It was a totally perfect phone call. Read the transcripts, nothing like it. He said, by the way, that I may be a better president than Lincoln and Washington combined. Okay. Everybody have a good night. Take care. Zach and Matt show out. We're going to be back on next week with Tim Ryan. We also have Bad Run Con, and then we're working on our third guest. And if we don't get a third guest, you'll get me for like another hour. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.